I love Tears of the Kingdom, but the same Zelda has lost some of the balance and build-up that this franchise used to be famous for. So to help me address this crucial matter for the next games, though truth to be told open world game, here is Joseph Ferris. But first, be sure to leave a like, subscribe and press the notification bell. We're going for 2023 likes.
6 years between the 19th and 20th Zelda, and despite both being gameplay and for the most part game world masterpieces, there is still a lot to address for the future. Things the past 3D and even top-down Zelda games like A Link Between Worlds did better. Nevertheless, before we look at the balancing issues that the Zelda team faces for the 21st and 22nd Zelda, let's go over Hidemaru Fujibayashi. This man wrote some of the most impactful stories in the series through the Capcom Zelda titles. The Oracle games established the resurrection of Ganon, the Minish Cap gave a backstory to Link's Green Hat, the Kingdom of Hyrule, and introduced one of the best villains, Vati. Here and through Skyward Sword after he joined Nintendo, we played through Fujibayashi's story as Link in the present while saving Zelda, not only watching backstory cutscenes. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, both directed by him, lacks this as we barely get to interact with the love interest and villain, all while conquering dungeons that are lackluster compared to past 3D Zeldas. And why is that? Close to total non-linearity in every aspect of the game, including the story and with it, pacing. The result is a sandbox, fully focused on gameplay innovation, but lacking in structure and character outside its few linear sections.
The golden parts of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, which shows how much better these games could have been with more structure and character. Sadly, all of these are brief. To illustrate the right way of doing this, do you remember what happens after Twilight Princess Lakebed Temple? One of the main villains, Zant, shows up, messes up both Link and Midna, and introduces the most emotional and best linear non-boss sequence in the series. Midna's lament up the castle town, the sewers, up Hyrule Castle, Zelda's sacrifice, and the path to the Lost Woods and the Master Sword. What we have here no longer exists, as the only current requirements to progress the story in Zelda are the number of hearts or stamina vessels you hold, plus non-interactive cutscenes you just simply watch. That is to say, how many shrines you have conquered and specific points you have touched.
This right here is why we feel less attached to those non-linear memories, which contain far more spoilers than the two main character-focused ones in Breath of the Wild. Storytelling should be linear, or else you can miss the build-up or punchline. And when you create a story with key character deaths, then don't make it possible to spoil yourself by heading into the wrong direction from the Great Sky Island. Ugh, Laurelin. And I am not optimistic with those replies from producer Eiji Aonuma. Quote, I think that with the freedom players have in the more recent games in the series, there still is a set path, it just happens to be the path that they chose. Okay, I understand that, but what if the path we chose gets key story moments spoiled for us? Eastern and Northern Hyrule are filled with spoilers, for example. This should not occur in games of this magnitude after waiting for them for over 6 years since the prior Zelda. And yes, there is an order to these memories, it's just so easy to miss that order if you follow your own path. Now, for the second part of producer Aonuma's response, it's interesting when I hear people say those things because I am wondering, why do you want to go back to a type of game where you're more limited or more restricted in the types of things or ways you can play? But I do understand that desire that we have for nostalgia, and so I can also understand it from that aspect. It isn't nostalgia though, we just want good open world storytelling. Just like in The Witcher 3, Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2, freedom within certain limits that keeps us invested in the narrative and scenarios created by the development team.
Tears of the Kingdom shines at its brightest within the linear sections leading up to dungeons, and then in the boss fights at the end of dungeons. Sadly though, instead of giving us an immediate taste of the distant past, from Zelda's perspective after this massive build-up, we get the same imprisoning war cutscene and Zelda asking the sages for help in her own time. This issue could have easily been fixed by jumping from playing as Link to suddenly playing as Princess Zelda for a short sequence, and then after getting a sense and taste of the distant past area, be rewarded with, you get it, the memory cutscene. And you could have kept the non-linear dungeon and present open world progression. Just have these past memories be linear playable sections after the first one where Zelda meets King Rauru and Queen Sonia, interacting with Rauru and Sonia in the flesh, exploring the Great Plateau when it was the capital of this kingdom of Hyrule, its Temple of Time and Hyrule Castle, being part of repelling the Molduga attack, going down to Hyrule Field for a cup of tea, and then after the turning point of the Distant Past section, get to run around the Zonai Forgotten Temple, all building up to the boss fight of the Distant Past playable section, the Imprisoning War, with 5 other sages, plus the King of Hyrule, fighting by our side. Now that is what would have made this game better, and perhaps there is hope, as Aonuma-san had this to say about the title character. Quote, "We think there's always room for thinking about this type of thing, and Zelda's role, and there may be some sort of possibility for something like that, namely playability, in the future." End quote. It should have happened in Tears of the Kingdom, but at least there is some hope with this dungeon quote.
Our intention with Tears of the Kingdom was to put a bit more density or thoughtfulness into the design of the dungeons in the game. Thankfully, we did get visually diverse dungeons and bosses back, but when it comes to the structure and level design of these temples, they're still the same. Reach a switch, turn them on X amount of times to open the path to the temple boss. Was it an improvement from Breath of the Wild's Divine Beasts? Yes, but is it nearly as good as the old temple formula? No. I think what the Zelda team fails to realize is that there is good and bad in both the series' past and present. Dungeons should have never been messed with, as the non-linear formula established in A Link Between Worlds was brilliant and far superior to the dungeon progression and design in both Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild.
At least we have temples/dungeons back, but they are more in name than the actual level design, the only true exception being the Lightning Temple, continuing the legacy of quality desert temples in 3D Zelda. However, do you know what was bloated and repetitive like no other? The depths. Too big for its own good, and an example of a layer that should have been addressed differently. Our idea was unconnected provinces, or actually tunnel networks with their own depth civilization, or people with proper quest lines, instead of fetching X amount of Poes. Wait a minute, are the bargainer statues just the modern Poe Hunter from Ocarina of Time and the Cursed Snob from Twilight Princess? It might be. And outside of these, it is just the same overblown and too big darkness, repetitive fights and objectives, mining of Zonite, and Lightroot activation. The depths was simply the worst area in the game. The biggest new territory of the 20th Zelda, but its time and effort could have been balanced so much better, with more content on the surface, and definitely in the Sky Islands. The surface should have had more of the ruined settlements restored, or at least have side quests to restore them. In Tears of the Kingdom, we rebuilt a grand total of 1 settlement, the Relin village, which wasn't ruined after the Great Calamity.
We don't get to restore a single settlement that was destroyed over 100 years ago by the Calamity. Not Mabe Village and Ranch, which could have served Lookout Landing greatly, and which, by the way, should have been downgraded to a defensive fort in favor of the main side quest of the game. We could have rebuilt Castle Town, or at the very least, its central square. In Tears of the Kingdom, we see construction foundations just for that, but it never goes anywhere. It's just a hint of what's to come, but nothing more. Now, let's get up to the Sky Islands. The top layer that was so heavily marketed that should have gotten more Sky Islands as it initially had, at least according to the pre-release making of interview with the Zelda team conducted by Nintendo themselves. There are just so many gaps above the surface map that could have been filled in. And where is the life that would have surpassed Skyward Sword's human civilization? It just isn't there, when it could have been with a simple lore change. Another Sky Island comparable to the size of the Great Sky Island, which also was sent up at the same time as that one, but with distant past Hylians, Zonai, Gerudo, Gorons, Rito, and Zora on it. Equally, in the scaled down depths, we could have the same races residing below their respective provinces, but growing distant from their brothers and sisters above. Great structure and variety, while avoiding bloated content and repetition.
Structure and balance when we get a new map with a new story, art style, and potentially new Link and Zelda, while you offer the best gameplay and game world interactivity that you will definitely deliver once again, plus the best opening and conclusion in the series. Do you have some other ideas? Then share them in the comments down below. If you haven't already, then be sure to leave a like, subscribe and press the notification bell to make this video more visible, perhaps even to the Zelda team. Last but not least, a big thanks to Joseph for joining this video, and to the many patreon.com/CommonRealm patrons on the screen who get exclusive content and have made the end of 2023 a little brighter for me. Special shoutouts go to all producers Zach Johnson and JC Funk, and He-Rips, Holly Wolf, Cheryl, Garrett Hoy, and Jeffrey Van Driest. You rock, and please enjoy one or both of these two awesome videos.